Hey everyone, and welcome back to this Python tutorial series. In this lesson, we're going over lists, and specifically about list methods. So a list in Python is another kind of data type that you can assign to a variable, and it allows you to store a collection of items. And when you store these items in a list, you can either have the data types the same, or you can have it a mix of different data types. Either one you choose, both will be fine, because lists are very versatile. And what I mean by different data types or the same data types in a list is that you can have a list contain either all strings, all integers, or all floats, or you can have the list contain a string, a float, or any other kind of data type that you want to include in that list. So it doesn't matter which one you choose, because either way it will be accepted. You can add them to the same list, and that makes lists quite versatile. Now, before we jump into some examples of lists, I want to first go ahead and talk about some key differences between lists and tuples. And why do I want to do that? It's because both lists and tuples have similar purposes. They are both used to store collections of items, but they do have some key differences that I do want to clear up so that you don't get confused in which one to use. So some key differences between the two are that lists are mutable and tuples are immutable. And what I mean by that is that lists can be modified later in your program. So for example, let's say you have a list of a bunch of data, but later on in your program you might want to add something else to it. Like you realize that, oh, okay, I think this list will be better once it has some more later in the program's execution. Well, lists are mutable, which means that you can modify the content later on in the program. You can add or remove or change elements. So that's one strength of a list. Whereas for tuples, they are immutable, which means that once you create a tuple, their contents cannot be changed later on in the program. So you cannot add or remove or modify them once they have been created. And so that's just what I wanted to tell you so that you know some distinctions between the two. And another little distinction is that lists are represented by the square brackets and tuples are represented by the curly brackets, as you see on screen right now. So that's it for the key differences. Let's jump right into some list examples. So the first thing we're going to do in the file editor window is create a list, and this will contain the integer data types. So there won't be strings or anything else. I'll just simply type in numbers for this. We can do whatever we want. 45, 12, 12, 34, 67, 88, 88, 54, 34, and it doesn't matter how long you make the list. Just choose whatever numbers you want. But one thing I'd recommend is that I would suggest to add some repeating numbers, because I promise that will be important later when I show you some of the methods that you can do with lists. We will need to have some repeating numbers so that I can make the concepts quite obvious to you. But don't worry about that for now. You don't have to make the list too long. Just simply add maybe some repeating numbers to it. And let's print out the list on the interactive shell. Now, as you can see here, that is exactly what we put down. So let's go and talk about the first method, which is the .append method. And the .append method adds an element right at the end of the list. Let's go and show some examples of that, where I'm going to type list1, whatever we called our list, simply put down the variable name and then do .append. And we're gonna put in the number 6. Number 6 inside that bracket. Make sure to also print the list again, because remember, Python programs start at the top and move down. So this print function over here will only print the original list, and since this line comes after that print function, it will not take into account the changes. So make sure that we have another print function that goes right below it. So run that and let's check the interactive shell. And as you can see over here, we indeed have the number 6 right at the end of the original list, because we appended number 6 right there. Now, there are some drawbacks to using this method though, because it can only take in one argument. So we can't do like this. If I want to add like multiple, well, not we can. If you want to add like three different items on the list, this will not work because it's meant to only take in one. And this error message will give you that exact explanation. It will say takes exactly one argument. So what I'm going to show you is another method, and it is the extend method. And this will add more than one value at the same time. So we don't have to do this like 656. We don't have to do list1.append 5, list1.append 6, or or append any other different items. We don't have to do that. It's way too inconvenient. All we want to do is take care of that with one line of code. And one way we can do that is creating another list. So I'm going to call that list2, and let's do the 656. So separate these items with a comma. Don't forget to do that. And then let's demonstrate. I'm going to first comment out list1.append, and I'm going to instead type list1.extend. And then inside these two parentheses over here, add in list2, or whatever you called your second list. Let me go ahead and run that program, and now you can see that I have managed to extend the list by combining both lists. So this entire section is list 1, this one here is list 2, and they're now combined into one list. Now, like I said before in the beginning of the video, we can combine different data types in the list. So right now over here I'm combining two lists, but I also want to let's add another data type. So let's add a string data type, because right now all we have are integers in these two lists. Let's do hello. We can do Raphael, which is my name, and then let's do another name. Let's do Emily for this one. Run it. And now, as you can see the list has integers over here, and now it has the strings, which I also put on list 2, because list 2 contains two different data types. It has hello, Raphael, and Emily in the huge combined list over there. And we can also add in a float. Let's do a decimal number and run it again, and there you go. We've added a float on there. So it's a list with combined data types. So let's move on to the next methods that I'm going to show you, and this one is the insert method. And this one will insert a new element, and you can specify the index of the list. Now I'm going to comment these two out as well. I can do my triple quotes to comment that out, and let's do list 1. We're going to affect the first list. In fact, let's space out the code so that you can kind of like distinguish between list 1 and list 2 much easier. So we are going to affect list 1 first. For this example, I'm going to do list1.insert, and then this will take in two arguments. So we're going to separate that with a comma. I'm going to do a string data type, and it's going to be insert example. And for the first one, we need to choose which index we want to insert it in. In my case, I will just do 3. So this will insert the insert example string into the third index of the first list. And we can go print the changes out by typing print list1 again. And that will print that out into the interactive shell. And now as you see over here, we should actually comment out the original. This is the original one, which I'm sure I've read. You can also refer to. So just to make it less confusing, I will comment out this original print function. And then I'm going to run the program again, and that is just the modified first list. So as you can see, because of this over here, this insert method, now if we go back to that, it inserts the insert example on the third index. Now, don't forget that in Python, indexes start at 0 and not 1, so it looks like that we inserted it at the fourth area, but it's actually the third index, because if you look at it, 45 is index 0, so that's the first one. 12, which is the second part in the list, is index 1, and then 12 again, which is in index 2, even though it's technically the third item in the list. That's why insert example was put on the fourth item, even though we specified the third index in this method. So just keep that in mind for when you manipulate lists. And the next one I want to show you is the .pop method, because this will remove an element at a specified index. So right now what we have over here, if I run the program, what we have is the modified one where we added insert example. I'm just going to give you an example of removing that with the .pop method. So do list1.pop, and we don't have to insert any other second arguments. We just need to put in the index number that we want to remove. So we want to remove insert example again. So in this case, let's count. So index 0, index 1, index 2, and index 3, like I mentioned earlier. So just simply put in the number 3. Put in the number 3, and then print that out. And that should get rid of the original third index value, which is insert example. So now we are back to the original list as it was over here. So the next one I want to go over is also the .remove method, and this one just removes the first item of the list with a specified value. And this is when I am going to show you why I wanted to have repeating numbers earlier, because remember what I mentioned, that make sure your list has something repeating, because this is what I'm going to demonstrate next. The .remove method will remove a number, the first instance of that number in the list. So in this case, let's remove the number 12. Well, actually no, let's remove the number 34 actually, because that's more of a distinction. This one over here is at index 3, and this one over here is at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, index 8. So it's one at index 3 and one at index 8. So let's demonstrate right now. So list1.remove, and the number we'll pick is 34. Go ahead and print that out. As you see over here, it didn't remove the other 34 because it removes the first instance when that number is shown in the list. So in that case, that was index 3. So it removed that one. Alright, so that's one way that you can remove a number as well in that list. The next one I want to show you is the .index method, where you can actually grab the number in the list. It can access that and see which index it's in. So just simply do the print function for this. And we can do list1.index, and let's do 34 again. And this will print out the index number of where 34 is in the new list. So since we already removed the original 34, it's going to take into account this one. And in this case, it says that we are at index 7, and that is true. If we count that starting from 0, it goes up to 7. And then one other example, since we still have repeating values in that list, is the .count method. So do print list1.count, and let's do the number 88, and it should say 2 when we print that out in the interactive shell. And that is right, so it says 2. And if I'm gonna go experiment and add in another 88 just to see if that is working perfectly fine, and it should now say 3 because we have 3 instances of that item reoccurring in the list. So that's going. So I only have 3 more to show you, which are quite straightforward, and we have one we can actually reverse the list. So just do list1.reverse. We don't need to pass it any arguments or anything like that. So just go and print that, and that will reverse the list that we have. That is the .reverse method. And then we have one more, which is the .clear method, and that will delete everything in that list. So if I do list1.clear and print that again, you can see that all we have left is a square of the two opening and closing brackets of the list. So that's just some examples of how you can manipulate lists throughout your program, and they can be very helpful in storing large amounts of data much more neatly. And they have different data types as well that you can put in that same list, and that makes it extra convenient. So I will see you in the next lesson. That's it for lists, and we will do some more with lists in future videos as well, because we occasionally combine different coding concepts together when we do examples. So stay tuned for the next lesson.